this gospel before. Am I on? No. We're going to get there. Working. How's that? Yeah. That, by the way, before was my mistake. I grabbed the wrong mic. They had me all set up with a different mic, so they just brought it to me. Today is a repeat. We heard this last week, didn't we? In fact, literally, one verse is a repetition. I am the bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread and drinks my blood will never be hungry, will never thirst again. You remember last week when I asked you to hold that in your mind as we talked about manna with the Israelites in the desert, and we said that was God's way of providing them food, but it also formed them as a people. And we want to be in that context today. Jesus as our manna. Jesus as bread from heaven. So as we talk today, we're building on last week's understanding. And he takes another turn today that's important. We kind of get this in the summer every year. We get the bread from heaven set of weeks. It's proper 12 with the feeding of the 5,000 through to 16, where Jesus is talking about being bread from heaven, and we're going to progress through that. So this is our summer thing we do, we Episcopalians, with our lectionary. This week, with the understanding that Jesus is manna, Jesus renews us, Jesus feeds us, just as God fed the Israelites. And Jesus forms us. We're headed next week into a get down and dirty gospel. So we need to set up and get ready for it this week. And I'm going to talk to you broadly about what is being said here. For Christians, and especially for Episcopalians, the incarnation is the foundational miracle of all other miracles. It's the one on which all of the others rest, and we invest heavily in incarnation. And it's a tough subject, as we know. It's hard to apprehend. The very best conversation I ever had about that was actually with a young man named John Benjamin, who was 6 at the time. This is some years ago. And he had questions. He is quite a theologian and was quite a theologian. Then he had questions about, what? I don't get this exactly. What's this about? And so I said, well, John, think about this. What if we found a tribe, an Aboriginal tribe? There are some that are just now being discovered who have lived remotely and with no contact with the outside world. What if we found one of those? And to our collective astonishment, they could breathe air and water, both equally well. They could literally go underwater and live. So they would walk around like we do on land, or they could swim with the whales, literally. What would their life be like? There would be a richness and an experience that we cannot look for in that. And they would have an entirely different relationship with nature. These people who can do both. And John got it. He said, oh, like Aquaman. Okay, like Aquaman. I had to look him up. I wanted to know my superhero. Yeah, like that. But supposing these people got a disease, and many died, which also often happens when we discover Aboriginal tribes, and the ones who lived lost their ability to breathe water. They could only breathe air. So that whole side of their lives would be gone. Completely disappeared. But except for one person. Also happens often with disease. There are a few who live through the disease and yet still can breathe air. And this person could inoculate the others so that they could again breathe air. That's what we have. That's what Jesus did. We are made. We were created to be vessels for divine life. If we don't have that life within us, we're empty shells. The whole earth feels it, and all people feel a yearning to be full of God. We're not God, but we should be full of God, to overflowing. He fed them enough to satisfy what they craved. God craves giving us and filling us to overflowing with divine life, with His beauty and glory and mystery. We should be walking as close companions and friends of the Trinity. That's what we were made to be. We were made to breathe both air and water. And somehow we got cut off from that part of our existence. Far be it from me to stand here and tell you how that happened, because the church has argued about that. We've called it original sin, we've called it this, we've said, well, we're all so sick that nobody can be healthy. We've said many things about how that happened. And no one has come up with a good answer. But all of us are aware in our inner selves, as we walk around, that things are not as they should be. And we are not fully who we should be. We have lost that ability to carry divine life in us, to participate in it. And what did God do about that? He acted like God. He came and became a human. And that person, Jesus, fully God, fully man, can restore us to divine life, can restore our ability to carry it in us. He can connect us again to God. He is our Savior. It's a beautiful and wonderful and awesome and puzzling thing. That's what God did for us. So that we can once again be filled with Him enough to satisfy what we crave. Just like with manna. He is the bread of life for us. In so many ways, and next week we'll talk about how at the Eucharist. But when we come to this table, we take Him in and we walk out filled. There are a couple of things that we need to know as we come to this table and do that, as we are filled with His divine life. One is, it's deeply offensive to the Jews who heard Him say this. The setting has changed in this reading today. Last week, He was talking to people who were outsiders. The day after the feeding of the 5,000, they had sought Him out, and He was talking to them. This week, He's in the synagogue. Verse 59 says, this is what He taught in the synagogue. What this really is in John is a whole lot of teachings put together, and it reads like one continuous thing to us, but it's actually lots put together. And in this case, He's teaching the insiders, the covenant people of God who know how to live with God, who know how to have this relationship. And what is He saying to them? And especially, what is He saying that's so deeply offensive to them? He's saying, I am the bread of life. Ergo, I mean the bread of life. Not I am, like I'm going to the store, or I'm hot today, or I am. God's voice out of the burning bush to Moses. I am who I am. Ergo, I me is that phrase. He is saying, I you to imagine just for a minute if I stood up here and said, I'm God, y'all. I sincerely hope, were I to do such a thing, you would be so deeply offended that you would either get up and rush forward to take care of me, the problem, or you would leave and say, nope. That's so deeply offensive to believers. That's what he's done here. He has announced who he is. He happens to be right. I have a former professor who used to talk to us about what God wanted for our lives. And he would say, just remember, there is a God. It's not you. In this case, he's right. He is God. I am the bread of life, is what he has proclaimed in the center of their worship. No wonder they're offended. We get that. God's not afraid to offend us. We need to be aware that as he reclaims us and comes to get us, he's not afraid for that to push us or rock our boat. He's not afraid. We might be, but he won't be, to where that will lead us. That's something we need to keep in mind as we take Eucharist. The other one is this. None of us, not a person here deserves what they get at this altar. None of us deserves divine life. Although we were made for it, none of us has earned it. And it's not based on anything we do. It is grace. It is abundant, loving provision of God who wants to fill us up in every nook and cranny of our inner being. Not because of who we are, not because of what we've done. We ought to do some things, but it's not about that. It's free for everyone who wants it. Need to keep that in mind as we come to the Eucharist. What I like to say to my friends who approach perfection, none of us being perfect, is cut it out. Nobody's perfect. If you start being perfect, you're going to ruin it for the rest of us. If somebody could do it, we wouldn't need Jesus. Nobody can do it. We need to keep that in mind as we come here. Next week is a doozy, because we will be talking about some of the nitty-gritty about how he is our bread of life. But I want to end today by remembering that as we come to the table and as we join him here, we are offered a free gift, the provision and the love of God to fill us up, to be restored, pure grace, free, gracious. It reminds me of one of my favorite verses about divine life, because Jesus talks about this all through John. When he says to the woman, the Samaritan woman at the well, but those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I give will become in them a spring of water, gushing up to eternal life. It's a wonderful, wonderful promise. Let's say, as we receive and as we go out, let's say with the psalmist, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Happy are those who